Hi there. As you know, you need to tell Fairbot what the selection is that you want it to apply a bet or a trade to. And there's a variety of ways of doing that. But in any rule, in the action and in any of the conditions, you need to specify a selection. So you see here I'm using a runtime, which I've introduced you to before, but you'll see there's a whole range of other options. Most of these will effectively allow you to sort a list and choose from an index. So for example, if I chose stall draw number, you can specify the stall draw number here. Of course, that only applies to sprints in general. That will cause an error if it's on a long hurdles race, for example. So if we choose runtime, as I say, I've showed you that before, and that allows you to select from a list. Now I've got a simple strategy set up here with 4 separate trades, each going in for a £25 bet with a tick offset of 5 ticks increasing up to 20. And so in this case, if I just select a favourite here, I scroll down these, select them from the list, and I ultimately end up with 4 trades going in, each for £25 at 1.64, and there are all the offset bets sitting and waiting. But I've flagged up to you before that it isn't necessarily a good idea to use the act runtime option on multiple rules, simply because it increases the possibility that you inadvertently select the wrong runner or indeed miss one out completely. So there's another way of doing this, which I'll show you just now. We can leave the first trade as it is, but if I go to the second trade and change the at runtime and choose buy last bet and do the same with the other ones, the idea here is that Fairbot will look at the market and look at what your last successful bet was, and it will base the selection on that. Now, as I've got it here just now, this is likely to cause an error, but I'm doing it deliberately this way to actually let you see. So let me just skip to the next race. If I just choose the favourite again from this one, which is Shine on Paddy by the looks of things, this is going to kick in a minute before the off, so I'll just skip ahead to just before a minute. Okay, we're just about coming up to where the first trade will go in, which should happen now. Okay, and there you see the errors coming up. Now that's partly because I have these configured to fire at exactly the same time, and it's also partly because I'm in the pre-race greyhound markets. So the submission of the very first trade, it isn't matched immediately. And so what's happening is there's a split second where there isn't a bet sitting in the market. In other words, this thing here, buy last bet, is looking for a matched bet in the market. And just at that instant, there isn't a matched bet available, so the rule fires, but it comes up with an error. You probably won't find that happening in the horse racing markets, but as a matter of good practice, what you might want to do is actually configure it slightly differently. And there's a variety of ways of doing that. You could, rather than having these 3 go in at the same time as your first trade, actually put a delay on there. Trouble with the pre-race greyhound markets, you may actually have to delay that 4 or 5 seconds. That's one way of doing it. My preferred option is actually to put a condition in that actually checks that there's a matched bet in the market. So in this case, we're just going to make sure it's greater than 0. It's a back bet we want to look for, and it has to be matched. It doesn't necessarily need to be fully matched as long as it's there. So if we add those in to each of those subsequent trades, and we'll try it again on the next race. Okay, so we can save that. That's us ready to go. So we'll just switch to Harlow. And once again, we'll look for the favourite. So Millrock Road will do it. And again, I'll come back in 30 seconds. Okay, the bet should be going in now.
This event will start in 1 minute.
And there you see they're all taken. All of them have gone in, no errors. There's our 4 bets going in with the corresponding offsets. So that's a nice way of doing it as well. But there is one other thing that you need to watch out for, and that is a situation if you've got a market where you have other things happening that might put in a bet. So those subsequent trades, as I've got created here, may actually cause the smaller trades, the latter trades, to go in on the wrong selection. So let me just illustrate that for you. What I'm going to do is, I'm not going to assign, well, I can do, I'll assign this just now, but I'm not going to specify the runner for the first trade. Instead, what I'm going to do is, normally I was putting this on the favourite, so what we'll do is we'll put it on an outsider. Let me just swap off to make sure that this is taken. So there's £100 on Ridley's banner. And I'll come back a minute from the off. Okay, we're coming up to the 1 minute mark. You'll see that I haven't selected an option for my first trade. But because there's something already in the market,
this event will start in 1 minute.
You'll see these 3 have automatically detected that and put bets on Ridley's banner, which isn't necessarily what you want to do. So one of the other things that you can do is, in addition to these conditions in here, you might also want to link them to that trade, and you can do that simply by adding in another condition that checks to see if that rule has fired. So just make sure that's equal to 1, and you can do that on the other 2 trades. And so now what will happen is these trades won't fire unless that first trade is executed. Now that's still not necessarily a guarantee that you won't get anything funny happening, but it will help to stop that erroneous series of bets going into the market. Okay, so that's quite a useful technique. The only thing you need to be aware of is that it needs a matched bet in there to work, and you need to make sure that you get the logic of your strategy correct to avoid it inadvertently placing bets on something you don't want it to do. So certainly if you've got a strategy that's putting lots of different bets in, that might be harder to figure out what's happening. But in a simple situation like this, it can be a useful technique. And in the case of combining it with the at runtime option, it allows you just to have the one selection. Okay, give it a bash and let me know how you get on. Cheers, guys.